That's one thing that's not talked about in the Oregon market that's very disheartening to me is the quality. Everybody wants to talk about pricing. I got this strain, I got this number, but the actual quality of the cannabis, very few people actually talk about.
Well, let's talk about it now. How do you, when a vendor comes to you and wanting to sell your dispensary product, what's running through your mind when you're not only evaluating the quality of the product, whether it be flower, extract, or whatever, but also the company itself as well? Because as a business owner, I'm sure you're looking at this of like, it's not just bringing in product, but I'm developing a relationship with this business as well. And
Definitely.
so there are other dynamics too. So yeah, what's going through your mind there?
A lot of dispensaries operate on different models.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty old school in my morals. When I decide to carry a company's product, I develop a relationship with them, keep an open communication, and have a business relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I continue to carry their product because it's continually good and it's a
Mm-hmm.
continuous product. So the first thing I make sure the product's something I want, and then it's having conversations with the people that are selling it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a distribution company, I'll call the company that they're trying to sell the product for to get further information.
Yeah.
And then you can really gain a sense of knowledge about what's going on within that company by talking to these people and their level of education and what they're talking about. Then after that, it's looking at their I tend to look at operations, how they're cultivating, where they're throwing their waste, just different little practices of cleanliness. So it's a complete evaluation of the company as well as the product.
Mm-hmm.
Being in the regulated market, being in the metric system where everything's tracked seed to sale, I can't find an industry that's regulated more heavily than we are right now. The only thing I can find is hazardous waste.
Right.
Nothing is manifested from producer to retail.
Right. Complete chain of custody.
Complete chain of custody. Cannabis is its own little animal like that, and there's not too many things regulated more highly. So being in that model, it's super important to me to be able to work with businesses that have professionalism and have their eggs all in one basket, if you will. No, that's the wrong term.
They've got their shit together.
You got their shit together, to put it lightly. There's so many steps overlooked within the industry that I get emails from the OLCC saying I have a potential violation because so-and-so transferred this edible as an extract.
Oh.
Or this extract is edible, or the package is wrong.
Right, the weight was wrong.
Some fashion.
Yeah.
So to not have a relationship with that company, trying to get a hold of them to get the situation corrected becomes painstaking.
Yeah.
So to work with companies that I can have a business relationship with, that answer their phone and act professional, those are the type of relationships that I cherish because we can handle the situations, everything. It's sustainable practice.
Right.
Working with certain companies that are answering their phone one week, able to produce product this week, we might get to you next week. Just the level of professionalism in some of the businesses in the Oregon rec market is pretty unacceptable. I've found hair in flour before, and I contact the person unharshly, like, hey, I found hair in your flour, what do you want to do about it? And every instance I've been in has been a negative response. The last one was the cultivator sent me an article on what the FDA allows in food products. rat poop and all these different things that the FDA says is allowable in food.
In extremely trace amounts.
It's in extremely trace amounts, but it's still allowable. And
Right.
I just found it to be completely unacceptable.
Right.
We smoke this stuff. We're not eating it, and I don't care about the FDA.
And it's
When
going directly in your lungs, directly in your bloodstream.
Yeah, I don't want anything other than the flour that was grown. I don't care what the other substance might be. Hair is disgusting. I don't want to smoke it. I believe I've smoked hair before, and it tastes extremely nasty.
Yeah.
Probably the health benefits aren't there either.
Well, as a sidebar, real quick, I mean, that's an important distinction to make is quality standards for food and quality standards for things that you would inhale
Two different levels.
are two very different levels. And I think a lot of people don't understand that or stop to recognize that when you eat something, you have your liver that helps you deal with contaminants. And obviously you don't want to pound your liver with things that, shouldn't be processing. But that's one of the beautiful things about the liver, is that it is an organ that can break some of these things down, filter them out. But when you're heating something up and inhaling it, you're bypassing that metabolic process.
There's zero protection.
Yeah, it's going, anything that can pass through the membranes in your lungs and get to the bloodstream, it's going to, and then it's going to get distributed throughout your body. And so the idea of claiming
Allowable
food
traces.
standards for something that's going to be inhaled, that doesn't apply. And it's an argument that I got into some people with early on when the pesticide regulations were being established, because people said, well, they allow these pesticides on food, and it's like, well, you're not smoking your food.
The level of pesticide in beer is astronomical.
Yeah, and there are issues with that too. I'm not happy about levels of pesticide in foods or anything either, but you're not smoking these things. You are at least allowing your liver to take care of some of that and protect you. So just as an aside, it's very important distinction. Just because you might allow rat poop in food doesn't mean you should be smoking it.
100%. 100. So there again, the professionalism among some of the businesses is not quite there.
Yeah.
So getting some of those people weeded out, I think, is super important.
Yeah, what are some other examples of poor quality that you've seen come through getting into other products, like with extracts or topicals or edibles, that sort of thing?
Extracts, I've seen a race to the bottom, people processing 2-year-old trim.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Coming to me looking pretty bad. I can see the harvest date. So I can tell the material's 2 years old. I mean, you can trace it back.
And is there anything you notice as far as color?
Oh, got it. It looks
texture?
like motor oil that's been in the motor for 30,000 miles. It's just black tar.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of darkness that an extract can have. It can be a little bit on the darker side due to certain things. CBN is a darker compound. So if it has more CBN, it's going to be a little bit darker. But I'm talking black tar, grossness.
It smells like burnt hair.
Yeah. I think distillate has too strong of a hold on the marketplace.
It's gotten really popular, I've noticed.
I believe it to be a poor quality product. The reason distillate was even thought of or initiated was to get rid of pesticides out of dirty oil, so somebody could take pesticide-ridden cannabis oil, distillate,
and just try to pull the cannabinoids out and leave everything
cannabinoids
behind.
And they're able to leave the pesticides, so they're able to clean up dirty material. That's the only reason distillate was even introduced into our industry. So to see it gain a strong hold and see all the material that they're stripping out, all the good material, I think a full spectrum oil is way more beneficial, even if you're just trying to get high, than a distillate. Even though the distillate has a higher THC number, we could start talking about burning temperatures and different things like that. Just because you have a 90% extract doesn't mean you're going to get higher than a 70%. If you burn a 70% a little bit hotter than a 90%, you're going to get higher than a 90%.
Right.
So there again, that number becomes marginal again at the end of the day. But distillate, it's a huge.
Well, it's gotten really big in the hemp CBD markets because of the pressure to remove THC from extracts, and so there's the sort of processing pathway that I am seeing more and more frequently in the CBD market is doing these primary extractions, where it be ethanol or CO2 or whatever, then doing distillation so that you get these numbers really high. You get that CBD up to 80%, 85% or whatever, and then doing usually some form of chromatography to remove the THC out. So then you've boosted that number a little more because you've pulled out THC and some other fractions that you don't want. And so you end up with this super, super thick distillate product, heavily refined product that's primarily CBD, almost 85 to 90% CBD with some other cannabinoids in there. And I see some of these products labeled full spectrum. And that's something that I've been harping on a lot lately, just the term full spectrum.
I've seen it on distillate. I just saw it today on a distillate cart. Full spectrum distillate.
Yeah, and I'm like, what does that mean? And I think I've teased out why that's happening. What manufacturers are telling me is like, oh, that refers to the cannabinoid spectrum. and that, in distillation, we're still maintaining the cannabinoids. I'm like, okay, that may or may not be true. I don't know if it's even possible to verify that.
I don't think it is.
I don't know any labs that are testing for the hundreds of cannabinoids that are actually present when you start getting into the minors.
Not at our level.
No. Or even labs that are testing for, the dozen or more primary cannabinoids. Usually at best you might see test result that hits 7 to 12 cannabinoids.
Right.
And so there's that piece. But also I think it's super misleading and confusing to consumers.
Who says straight CBD isolated from everything else does anything beneficial for your body?
Well, I mean,
what's the benefit of isolating CBD?
That's a big argument, is how does a heavily refined CBD product, or THC product for that matter, affect somebody compared to a broader spectrum extract? A lot of that data doesn't exist beyond.
There was a little bit of data out of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where there was a scientist that was, way more about this than I do, but there was a scientist studying cannabinoids and cancer in lab rats.
Mm-hmm.
Full spectrum, he was able to put the lab rats with cancer into remission.
Right.
He started isolating compounds, and I remember CBD, he specifically isolated CBD compound and was given to the lab rats with cancer, and they all died of the cancer. So he went back to a full spectrum, and then was able to put the cancer in remission again. So the full spectrum is really important. All these isolated compounds, I believe, don't do nearly as much, if they do anything, nearly as much as a full spectrum, everything that was involved to begin with.
Well, it's just they're just very different products. And I'll try to find that paper and see if I can link it when I end up posting this. But
that's a good one.
There have been some other studies too that have looked at dose response curves. So how, so basically you'll have some marker that you're looking at to indicate whether something is an effective treatment. And in the study that I'm thinking of, it's, I believe it's an inflammatory marker or something like that.
Copy.
And when administering these full spectrum extracts, and I need to go back and look at what they meant by full spectrum. I'm sure they didn't use the term full spectrum, but when they were giving these broader spectrum extracts, I believe it's to mice or rodents in general, they were finding that as they increased dosage, the benefit got better and better. Whereas when they administered isolate, they hit a peak, and then they started to see negative effects as dosages increased. And so with the isolate, you saw this bell curve where you'd get benefit, and then level out and then go down. Whereas with the broader spectrum extract, it seemed to be more of a linear, line.
Copy.
And so there's some little data like that, but not a lot of good. There's, to my knowledge, and I could be totally wrong, so someone out there correct me. I'm totally open to being wrong. I feel like I'm wrong about all sorts of things all the time. But I don't think there's been any human clinical trials looking at these types of effects yet.
Not that I've seen. It's been all rodent.
Yeah. They're rodent at best. And so it'll be interesting to tease that out. And I try to be careful about talking about broad spectrum extracts and isolate and what they do or don't do, because we just don't know. But I do have a lot of friends that do clinical work with patients and that can report anecdotally that they've seen that they get the best responses, typically from ethanol-based extracts that maintain a broader spectrum of phytochemistry. They tend to get better results at lower dosages with fewer side effects.
Agreed.
And I have personal friends that have reported the same thing. Obviously, I know as a scientist that's not enough to extrapolate to, a population as big as, the state of Oregon or, the country of the United States or the world, but it does create an argument of why we need to look more closely at that, for sure.
Turns the light bulb on.
Yeah, it turns the light bulb on, for sure.